I didn't lose my marriage in one night. I lost it in a series of small disappearances, so quiet no one heard the door close behind me. And the terrifying part is, I didn't always hate the feeling of vanishing. Sometimes it felt like relief. Sometimes it felt like power. Sometimes it felt like I found a secret switch inside my own body, one I didn't even know existed. And once I found it, I started reaching for it like I needed it to breathe. And it didn't happen in one leap. It happened in tiny steps. Just a minute, just one more scroll, just one more look before I sleep. From the outside, my life looked ordinary, almost enviable in its sameness. A home with noise in it, little feet, cartoon voices, the constant hum of something needing attention, a sink that never stayed empty, a calendar that always had something written in the next box, a marriage that felt stable, safe, the kind of safe people pray for. He knew my coffee order before I asked. He remembered the small things, how I liked the blankets tucked, how I liked the car temperature set before we left the driveway. He wasn't perfect, neither was I, but we were real. We had history. We had inside jokes. We had children who assumed we were forever. And I loved him. That's what makes it hard to say the next part without my throat tightening. Because this story doesn't begin with hatred. It doesn't begin with cruelty. It doesn't begin with some cinematic moment where I decided to torch my whole life for something reckless. It begins with a feeling, a quiet, hot little spark that found me in the dark. At first, it wasn't dramatic. It was a late-night scroll with the screen brightness turned down, the room dim, the house finally quiet. It was the familiar poll of just 10 minutes, the kind of harmless promise people make to themselves when they're exhausted and desperate to stop being a person for a moment. Just enough relief. Relief is dangerous when your body learns it faster than your mind can question it. No one talks enough about how addiction can live in the soft places, how it can wrap itself in comfort, in me time, in I deserve this, in the private glow that makes you feel like you still belong to yourself. Because that's what it felt like at first, belonging. And I told myself the same thing every time, like a prayer. It's nothing, it's just a minute. I'd go through my day like a responsible adult, packing lunches, answering questions, solving problems, being touched constantly in the innocent ways that motherhood demands. And by night, my skin would feel like it had been worn thin. My mind would feel like a crowded room with too many voices in it. Then the house would go still, and I'd feel a different kind of hunger. Not romantic, not sweet, more physical than that, like a low pulse waking up under my ribs, like my body remembering it could want something even if I didn't name it out loud. I'd tell myself I was just unwinding, just letting my mind roam where it couldn't during daylight. But my mind didn't just roam. It pulled toward the soft glow of my phone, toward that private light in my palm, like a candle I cupped my hands around so no one else could see. And even before I opened it, my body would lean toward it, like it already knew what the reward would be. At first, it wasn't even about content. It was about the feeling of being pulled into a world where nobody needed anything from me, where I could look, linger, and choose, where I could be anonymous and adored at the same time. Just looking, I told myself, just a little escape. The first time I felt that rush, it hit like warmth spreading through cold hands. I remembered the way my breath changed, shallow, then slower, then strangely deliberate. I remember how my shoulders dropped, how the muscles in my neck loosened like someone had untied a knot. For a moment, I didn't have to be responsible. I didn't have to be good. I didn't have to be strong. I just had to feel. And this is the part I'm ashamed to admit. It felt good. Not sweet good, not love good. More like relief, like pressure leaving my body, like my mind finally going quiet. For a few minutes, I didn't feel hollow or heavy or behind. I felt lit from the inside, chosen by a sensation that didn't ask permission. And it didn't just feel good. It felt easy. a clean little shortcut. I could press a button and feel something shift inside me. Relief, heat, a sense of being awake. The pleasure wasn't even the point at first. The point was that it made everything else go quiet. But then my brain started learning the pattern: stress, secret, reward. And once that pattern locked in, the craving didn't show up like a choice, it showed up like a requirement. I wasn't just taking the edge off anymore. I was teaching myself that the fastest way to feel okay was to disappear. And somewhere along the way, just scrolling turned into lingering in places I shouldn't have been. Threads, accounts, private corners of the internet where the rules felt softer and my conscience felt farther away. Just curiosity, I told myself, just a peek, just one more. Afterward, I'd set my phone down like it was nothing, like it wasn't a match I'd just struck in a dry forest. I'd look around the dark room like a thief, even though no one was there. There was a brief afterglow, then the shame would arrive right on time. I'd catch myself smiling at nothing, like my body had a secret it didn't want to confess. Then, almost immediately, the other feeling would show up, the one that made me swallow hard and look away from myself. Because I could sense what I was doing, trading integrity for a rush, trading peace for a spark, trading my real life for a private storm. That's how it hooked me, not with romance, with chemistry and silence. And once your nervous system learns that shortcut, it doesn't ask politely next time, it demands it. I began to reorganize my life around secrecy without admitting that's what I was doing. I'd stay up later. I'd take longer in the bathroom. I'd find excuses to be alone in small, ordinary places, like the car in the driveway after errands, the engine off, the world quiet, my phone in my hand like a secret pressed to my palm. I became good at disappearing without leaving the house. The phone glow became its own little doorway, soft, blue, and oddly comforting. I'd sit there for just a minute and then look up and realize time had moved without me. And the worst part was I started protecting the ritual like it was mine, like anyone who interrupted it was stealing from me. Just 5 more minutes, just until I feel calm, just until the itch fades. That's when it shifted, again, quietly, almost politely, into interaction. A reply here, a reaction there, a message that felt harmless because it was only words, until the words started feeling like a current I didn't want to step out of. Just a reaction, I told myself, just a reply, just words. I got brilliant at timing, finding the moments when the house was loud enough, busy enough, chaotic enough that no one would notice I was gone. But the worst part wasn't the time. It was what it did to my mind. The outside world started to feel dull, like I was moving through my days wrapped in cotton. Responsibilities started to feel like interruptions. Conversations started to feel like I had to push through just to get back to the private place where nothing asked me to be virtuous. I told myself I deserved it because I worked hard. I told myself it didn't affect anyone. I told myself it was normal. I told myself it was stress. I told myself a lot of things. Here's the truth I didn't want to say out loud. I liked the version of myself I could be in secret, not the version who reminded everyone of appointments and cleaned up messes and remembered to buy milk. The version that felt wanted, the version that felt powerful, the version that could let her mind lean toward the edge of something dangerous and feel her own body answer back, quietly, privately, like a second heartbeat. The pleasure wasn't only the feeling, it was the control. Start, stop, hide, erase. I liked that I could disappear and come back looking normal. I liked that I could be good in the morning and reckless in the dark, and no one could prove it. Just me and the screen, I told myself. Just my secret. Just mine. That version started demanding more. Not in a graphic way, this isn't that kind of story, but in the way your body starts searching for intensity, like it wants a sharper current to feel the same jolt, like you're chasing the exact moment right before you lose your composure, and you keep inching closer to that line because it makes you feel alive. The door that had opened softly began to open wider. My mind began to wander during the day, at the sink, at red lights, in the grocery store aisle. I'd be standing there with a cart full of normal life, cereal, fruit, paper towels, and suddenly I'd feel that private spark under my ribs, hot and inconvenient, like it didn't care what aisle I was in. The craving didn't feel like a thought, it felt like gravity. And I hated how clearly I remembered the pleasure of those moments, the small bloom of it, the way my mind would soften at the idea. It was the kind of pleasure that doesn't comfort you. It convinces you. It tells you this is who you really are. This is what you've been missing. I didn't hate the secret, and that's what scared me. And when your brain starts speaking like that, it starts rewriting your definition of harmless. I tried to control it. I created rules. Only at night. Only when everyone's asleep. Only when I'm stressed. Only once.
Rules are what people make when they're trying to convince themselves they're still in charge. The problem is, addiction doesn't respect rules. Addiction negotiates. It bargains. It whispers in your ear like a lover you can't trust. Soft, persuasive, patient. Just 5 more minutes. Just tonight. Just this one thing. You've earned it. It doesn't matter. No one gets hurt. And every time you listen, something in you learns a new normal. I trained my brain to treat secrecy like a reward. And once I realized there were real people on the other side of the screen, people who could see me, respond to me, want me, something in me leaned in. A little too eagerly. A little too often. Just talking, I told myself. Just attention. Just a harmless thrill. I started having a second life humming under my skin. It was there at dinner when I was smiling and passing plates, my husband talking about his day, the kids interrupting with their bright, chaotic stories, and me nodding, laughing, playing my part, while part of my mind was already slipping away. It was there when my husband touched my waist as he passed behind me in the kitchen, a small, affectionate touch, familiar, safe. And something ugly happened inside me. My body reacted, but my mind compared, measured. The more I fed that private spark, the less present I became for the love I already had. And I wanted more. Not more love, not more intimacy, but more intensity, more edge, more of that private lightning I'd been feeding in the dark. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just escaping, I was being changed. He would ask, "You okay?" And I'd answer, "Yeah, just tired." The most dangerous lies are the ones you can say without blinking. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from hiding inside a life that looks full. People assume you're okay because you're busy. You assume you're okay because you're functioning. You assume you're okay because nothing has exploded yet. But inside, you're splitting. One version of you is setting the table. The other version is following that phone glow like it's a lighthouse, like it can guide you out of yourself. It wasn't one big betrayal, it was 1,000 small ones. A deleted history, a second account, a conversation that crossed a line and then another, because the thrill wasn't only what was being said, it was the secrecy, the adrenaline of being seen by someone who didn't know your real life. And then there were the moments that are hardest to admit, when I sent things I shouldn't have sent, when I answered messages I should have ignored, when I kept a conversation alive because I liked how it made me feel, awake, desired, untouchable. Just one message, I told myself, just a quick answer, just this once. There's a particular electricity in being wanted by a stranger, not because it's meaningful, but because it's uncomplicated. No history, no responsibilities, no expectations beyond the moment. And that electricity became part of the problem too, because I started craving the escape more than I craved real closeness. I told myself it wasn't cheating if it wasn't physical. Then I told myself it wasn't cheating if I never met anyone. Then I told myself it wasn't cheating if it was just words. Addiction loves technicalities. It turns morality into paperwork. And while I was negotiating with my conscience like a lawyer, I was ignoring the simplest truth. I was building a private world that didn't include my husband. Not fully, not honestly, not the way marriage requires. Even in the moments when we were close, I had a part of me turned away, like a locked drawer inside my chest, like I was saving a version of myself for somewhere else. At night, I would lie beside him and stare into the dark. He would breathe slow, safe, trusting. Sometimes he'd shift in his sleep and reach for me without waking fully. Just instinct, just closeness. And I'd feel my whole body tense, not because I didn't want him, but because I didn't feel like I deserved to be touched, like everything was still true. That's when shame becomes physical. It sits in your throat. It makes your skin feel too tight. It turns love into something you're afraid to accept because you know you're not holding your end of it. I began to notice how it made me sharper with the people I loved, less patient, less present, like my attention had been siphoned off into a hidden reservoir my family couldn't touch. I'd snap at small things, a spilled drink, a question asked at the wrong moment, and right after, guilt would crash over me so fast it felt like nausea. I'd hug my kids too tight, like I could hold myself together through them. I'd look at my husband and feel a wave of panic because he didn't deserve any of this. He didn't deserve a wife whose mind was half in the room and half somewhere behind a locked door. That's another thing people don't say out loud. Betrayal is a practice. You don't just fall into it, you train for it. You train by lying, by minimizing, by compartmentalizing, by becoming fluent in "it's not that bad." One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, sunlight cutting across the counter, and I suddenly had this thought, clear as a bell, cold as a blade. If I don't stop, I'm going to do something I can't undo. It wasn't a prophecy, it was a recognition. The door had changed the shape of my desire. It had changed my threshold for risk. It had changed what enough meant. And for a moment, it scared me. Not enough to stop, but enough to see the cliff. Somewhere inside me, the responsible part, the part that loved my family, started whispering for help. And another part of me, the part that craved escape, answered back with something that sounded like confidence. "You're fine. You'll never go that far. You'd never do that." But I had already gone farther than I admitted, and the distance between never and one day is smaller than people think. The next chapter of my life didn't begin with a dramatic announcement. It began with a glance, a message, a moment where someone saw what I was hungry for and offered it to me, wrapped in a pension, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. And I felt the familiar spark, dangerous, bright, light up under my ribs. A thought formed, quiet enough to pretend it wasn't real. What if fantasy isn't enough anymore? I didn't say it out loud. I barely admitted it to myself. But once a thought exists, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It grows. It starts making plans in the parts of your mind that used to belong to love. And the scariest part? When the next door finally appeared, it didn't look like danger. It looked like an invitation. In Chapter 2, I'm going to tell you what I was really running from, the loss that hollowed me out long before any secret ever did, and why attention started to feel like oxygen. Because once you understand that, you'll understand why the phone glow wasn't just a habit. It was a doorway, one I kept walking through.